All right, students, welcome back. I hope you had a nice weekend and enjoyed the sunshine. I'm going to go over the slides for this week in this screencast and hopefully clarify any questions you might have. It's basically broken into 3 days. The first day is going to be check-in and guess my setting activity. There'll be 3 discussion posts this week that you'll find in the week of May through 11th through 15th. Let's go over what that's going to look like. So, first thing, you could respond to the check-in prompt. Again, you can do this in any fashion or over how many days you'd like. But if we're looking at it this way, you'll respond to the check-in prompt in this week's community folder, and you'll review the following slides to prepare for this week's discussion post. So I'm going to walk you through the slides here about what we're looking at. We're going to be doing creative writing, and we're going to start with setting. So believe it or not, choosing the right setting is one of the most important decisions to make when planning a story or a scene. The location can add mood, supply tension and conflict, steer the plot, characterize, and even provide a way to dribble in backstory. Going with the first thing that comes to mind is often easier, but may rob the scene of added depth. Locations that are frequently used in books and film may also bore readers. So developing a good setting is going to be really important for any of the stories or any story that you write. So let's look over some of the elements of a setting. There's 3 elements: time and place, physical world, and social world. To put it simply, setting is the time and place of the action in a story. The setting of any story includes those concepts I discussed: physical world, time of the action, character, social environment, and the physical world to get started. The physical setting includes the author's description of the place, scenery, weather, location, season, etc. So a good author sets the scene of the physical world so the reader is able to transport themselves into that world and understand what's going on with the characters. Some words you might use for the physical world include things like city, state, country, castle, cottage, snowy, sunny, summer, park. These are just some basic ideas to get you thinking about the physical world. 2. Time. The time in which the action takes place could include information on the time of the day, time of the year, or even if your story is a particular time in history or in the future, right? So it could be in the afternoon, the evening, the future, in colonial times, right? So you want to have that included in your setting. The third thing is social environment. The social environment of the setting includes the manners, customs, and moral values of the character's society. This could include local customs or societal norms that differ from the modern-day world of the reader, or from a country that is foreign to the reader. So you want to think about what kind of a social environment will your world be, your story be in. Some words you might use for the social environment might be like traditions, customs, values, norms, manners. So you want to have these things in there. You want to have time, could be history, year, day. You want to have scenery, you want to have weather, you want to have the location, the season, the customs, and the social norms. In addition to that, we want to think about mood and tone. What is the feeling a piece of literature gives us, and what is the writer's attitude towards the audience or how they present their story? So 2 words, sometimes, people confuse them, but the idea is mood and tone. So mood examples could be things like cheerful, dreamy, lighthearted, dreary, overwhelmed, nervous, annoyed. Tone word examples would be things like serious, hopeful, optimistic, sarcastic, frustrated, proud, straightforward. Okay? So let's take a look. Mood sets the mood of the story. Okay? For example, if a story is that 2 kids are playing hide and seek and it is set here, what would that mood be? Let's look at the second one. How is the mood different from a story set in the other place? So think about how completely different those 2 settings are and what the mood would be and how you would describe that. Let's get another example. Tone. For example, if the story is about a group of politicians trying to pass a law, okay, what is the writing going to be like? Or how's the tone different from a story set in this, which looks like maybe it's a circus of some sort or some kind of carnival performance, something like that. Oh, circus, it says it right there. All right, so moving on. In addition to those things, so thinking about the physical location, the time, thinking about the cultural or social norms, thinking about the mood and the tone you want to evoke, you also want to think about how are you going to describe that well? How are you going to describe those things well? And one way to do that is through sensory imagery. That could be think about the 5 senses: sound, sight, touch, taste, and smell. Let's look at an example. Look at the difference between a basic setting description and a more detailed one which uses sensory imagery. Let's identify the uses of the senses in the second example. So identify sound, sight, taste, touch, and smell. So it was foggy beside the water. So this is a very basic setting description. But let's look at the second one here. The waves crashed loudly against the shoreline. The fog broke for a moment as the wind brushed over the cliffs. The castle came into view, a grand stone fortress standing above the ridgeline. The fog brushed my face in cool droplets, and I could smell smoke from a distant fire. Sea salt graced my lips. I walked towards the fortress, wondering what mysteries and treasure might be found behind those walls. So what would be examples of sound, sight, taste, touch, and smell? And all 5 are in this paragraph. Take a moment to come back to this after, or if you see it right now, try to identify all 5. And where are they and what are they using? Let's look at a second example. Let's look at the difference between a basic setting and this second example. The hills were dreamy and beautiful. Okay, fine, pretty basic. Or, I dreamed of jagged peaks lining a curving river, with magic moss greening the banks. At the tops of these peaks were white mists. If you could float down this river and eat the moss for food, you would be strong enough to climb the peak. If you slipped, you would only fall into a bed of soft moss and laugh. And once you reached the top, you would be able to see everything and feel such happiness it would be enough to never have worries in your life ever again. So not all 5 examples are in here, but the descriptive writing is very powerful. So what are the things that the author is doing? In what ways is it making you feel or taste or smell? Okay, maybe all of them are actually in here, but what ways do you get those feelings of this place? And how do you imagine it? So take some time to look through it. All right. So your assignment is first going to be, for day 1, for your possible setting, brainstorm a list of 10 possible locations. So it could be real or imaginary. You can create a setting, but it may be easier if you can think of just first settings that are in books, settings that you've been to, settings that people might know. So include some that have personal meaning to you or from a character's perspective you have in mind. Play with weather elements, time, quality of light, customs, norms, mood, and tone to further customize your setting. Challenge yourself to find the perfect fit and it will pay off by strengthening your story and offering readers a fresh experience. Using your powers of description to include sensory imagery, describe in 1 to 2 paragraphs one setting from your list with which you're familiar. Do not name what it is. So you're just going to make a post of a setting. So post that setting to the discussion post entitled Guess My Setting, and then use the comments field to guess your peers' settings. So for instance, maybe they wrote about a Walgreens. Maybe they wrote about Discovery Park. See if people can guess that place without saying what it is, merely using descriptive language. All right. Day 2. Literary devices. So we want to get familiar with literary devices. Over the next couple weeks, we're going to be giving you, next few weeks, we're going to be giving you literary devices to think about, to incorporate into your writing. Literary elements are the basic building blocks of stories. They should always be in stories. Plot, setting, structure, characters, mood, theme, right? Literary devices or figurative language are words or phrases that writers use for artistic purposes. So they give stories style, depth, and personality. Some aren't meant to be non-literal, like a pun or metaphor. It requires that readers understand nuances, okay, in order to see secondary meanings. So examples would be like personification, irony, analogy. So imagery. You guys just learned about those strong sensory details, right? Soon it got dusk, a grapey dusk, a purple dusk over tangerine groves and long melon fields. The sun, the color of pressed grapes, slashed with burgundy red, the fields, the color of love and Spanish mysteries. Okay, and you kind of learned it draws, makes things vivid, images and emotion, makes more interesting to read. You can connect with the characters and the setting. Now we're going to learn about three other ones. Metaphor is the first one. Metaphors compare two ideas so that readers apply the qualities of one to the other. For example, the road was a ribbon of moonlight. Okay, the ribbon of moonlight and the road are tied together. They're being compared. So you can kind of get a sense of what that road was like. You can even imagine what that looks like in the moonlight. Yeah, so blah is blah. Simile. A simile also compares two ideas, but specifically using like or as. It's basically a specific type of metaphor. So the sun was like a large ball of butter. Sun equals butter. Bob is as brave as a lion. Right? Using like or as to compare either the ball, right? The sun to a ball, or Bob, okay, to a lion. Personification. This is the last one we're going to do this week. Giving human living qualities to something inanimate or non-human. Example, the wind stood up and gave a shout. He whistled on his fingers and kicked the withered leaves about, and thumped the branches with his hand. Personification can make non-human objects and ideas more relatable. It can also make objects or ideas seem more vivid. Okay? So the wind can't stand up. It can't shout. It doesn't have fingers. It can't whistle in that way. Okay, so all those things are human qualities. We see personification in advertisements all the time. Gatorade always wins. Gatorade can't box. So, your step 2 here for day 2 is write your own example of a metaphor, a simile, and personification using complete sentences. You can either write 3 separate examples or you can link them together to describe a single person, object, or location. Write your description on the literary device practice discussion board, so the second discussion board. If you want, a bonus could be to draw a picture of what you wrote for one or all of the literary devices and attach it to your post.